Hey, this is Nolan North, Nathan Drake from Uncharted, and you're listening to Raw Dogs, part of the Greenlit Podcast Network. And why wouldn't you be? It's the best. Sic Parvis Magna.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Raw Dogs. You know us as the better half of Hair of the Dogcast. We're the young ones. We're the cute ones.
The ones they didn't want on the same team during the debate.
They knew that our powers together would...
It was too much.
It was too much. It was too much that they couldn't even handle it because both of us, if you didn't listen to the Street Fighter versus Mortal Kombat, are staunchly in the Street Fighter camp. But they forced me to pretend I liked Mortal Kombat more for the bulk of the episode. And
I mean, you still kicked my ass, so there's that.
I was in high school debate for like a couple months. I don't want to brag. Before I quit, Mr. Cheddar is still upset about it. I always preferred Colby Jack.
That's actually pretty good.
He would have gotten a chuckle out of it, I'm sure.
I hope he's alive.
What do we do here, Dylan?
We talk about in-depth subjects, usually stuff we don't get to on the main cast.
The Dogcast is half news and updates, and then it's like a jovial discussion, whereas here we do deep dives, we go deep.
Yes.
And
that's why we're called the Raw Dogs.
That's why we call us the Raw Dogs. So because we feel it so much more. We're raw, you know?
Yep.
I'm Brad.
And I'm Dylan.
And that's Dylan. Today's episode is sponsored by a Patreon backer. Brian, a.k.a. Judge Tempest, backed us and suggested this episode, which I think is going to be a very fun one.
I bet he's more handsome than his brother.
We will never know. He suggested today's topic, and if you want to suggest topics, you can go to patreon.com, just like our new Patreon subscriber, Tyler Keller, who suggested another episode we'll be doing. But today's episode is Batman v. Spider-Man. Who has the better video games?
They certainly have the most.
This almost boils down to, Marvel versus DC in a broad sense, because Spider-Man, across the sands of time, I would say, is the most popular Marvel character.
Spider-Man across the sands of time.
Wolverine's up there.
Now, if we're talking about titles, if we're talking about actual comics,
yeah,
it's definitely not.
Mm-hmm.
It's always going to be X-Men as far as Marvel's concerned. But
although they've been
in terms of individual characters, it's definitely Spider-Man.
In terms of
a
rogues gallery, I would say Spider-Man has the most recognizable list of baddies out of all of the Marvel characters.
Yes.
I couldn't name one Iron Man villain other than Mickey Rourke with some electro whips.
The Mandarin.
Yes, my favorite style of orange.
They share a lot of villains with each other, especially like the Avengers.
I was a little confused with going through some of these Spider-Man things because I know Kingpin is traditionally more of a Daredevil villain, right? But he's always... No, is he usually Spider-Man?
Early on, it was definitely more of a Spider-Man villain.
Okay, he kind of moved more into the Daredevil territory.
Yeah, Daredevil adopted him because it's really hard to have Daredevil face certain types of threats.
Deadshot would be a bad one for him.
Well, I mean, Deadshot's DC.
Yeah. Dylan's going to be getting me on a lot of these points today here, folks.
No, he would face people like Stiltman.
Stiltman.
Literally Stiltman. He had like these leg extenders that made him probably as tall as like 100 stories.
Yeah.
Then there's like the Purple Man who can manipulate people's minds.
So our backgrounds with these characters... I am not huge into comics. I did read the entire Civil War arc over like 100 issues. I've read that.
Oh, you read all of the Civil War content?
All of the first Civil War. I read all of that, and that's across the different comics that they intersect with, too.
Wow, that's an undertaking. No offense to Marvel, like you get some winners and a lot of losers in terms of writing and art.
I think there should be more Moon Knight across the board.
Agreed. There's going to be a TV show, actually.
Yeah, I hope it's going to be as good as it can be. So my experience mostly isn't in the comic books. Everyone these days knows, the Tobey Maguire films. They know the X-Men films. They know the Marvel Avengers 33 film arc. I played some of the Nintendo, Super Nintendo games. I watched the animated series growing up. That's where a lot of our fans probably have some more overlap too, is the animated stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good Batman and Spider-Man content there. The Spider-Verse, which I recently found out was more of a game before it was the movie.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how many different iterations there really are, and there's a lot.
So some of those were made up, or they were from miniseries, which would kind of be, if we're talking like DC, like Elseworld Tales.
Like Red Sun for Superman.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff is stuff they'll bring in, they'll pop it back out. Everything in comic books, especially commercial comic books. So we're talking like your Marvel, DC, Image, stuff like that. A lot of that stuff is based on popularity. If something's a hit, they're going to milk the shit out of it. Look at Deadpool. I mean,
I'm getting a little tired of him.
And then there's Gwenpool, in which Gwen Stacy from an alternate universe.
She becomes Deadpool?
Yes.
I like Spider Gwen or Spider Woman, whatever her name is.
Yeah, I don't mind. They call her Ghost Spider now.
Ghost Spider.
The title of the book is Spider Gwen.
Yep.
But she's called Ghost Spider in the book.
And eventually someone said, you shouldn't have your first name in your superhero title.
No, I think
I'm Wonder Brad, which is a good name.
That's actually pretty good. You can shoot bread out of your fingertips.
I can eat large amounts of bread and feel bad about it.
You puke dough.
Where's the dough, Kingpin? you ate it all.
Of course, I'm known as the one who doesn't need notes for anything anyway.
But he has notes today.
This is an exception because there's just so much of each. This was daunting, actually.
Yeah, I was a little overwhelmed by it too. I whittled it down to what I think are the most important.
You did.
The weirdest and the worst.
Yeah, I read the outline. You definitely did. I said, are all of mine going to be in here? And they absolutely were. I don't think we're going to have a lot of trouble debating these.
Well, I think that there's some points where, at least with the modern stuff, you could have some good discussions there on some points. But I chose 7 different topics that we're going to discuss. So we have the best platformer, the best beat 'em up, the bad and the bizarre. And then after that, it gets kind of into the more modern stuff. The best comic book / animated series tie-in, something that's based on a previous thing. The best movie tie-in. The best original IP. And then our final decisions.
I had a lot to think about, especially after playing some of the other stuff I've never even touched.
I learned some interesting things today. Spider-Man has 2 Metroidvania titles. But before we get there, let's, video games in the early days, your 8-bit, 16-bit series, they're all going to be either platformers or beat-em-ups.
That's the way that it went. If you wanted to license anything, your go-to was going to be
something that would
platformer.
Sell.
Yeah, a side-scrolling platformer. These are easy. They're accessible. Everyone's played Mario. If they wanted to sell the most of anything, that's got to be their choice.
And something about Batman titles, a large amount of them are based off the movie series because Batman has been the most successful superhero movie-wise for a long time. And so the first one that I thought of note was Batman for the NES, based on the first Batman film by Tim Burton, 1989. So I played this for the first time, maybe a week ago.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think I played it back in the day.
I used to own it.
It's fun.
It's really good.
It's it holds up. It's got that NES difficulty, which you only get on those games back then.
Honestly, playing it again now, I really did find that it's a Mega Man-like.
Those games back then, they don't hold your hand and give you tutorials. I saw this shoot that maybe Batman could forgo part of the level and just bounce back and forth. I didn't know if I could jump off the walls. Sure enough, I could jump up this whole thing, and I had a detective moment where I was like, I solved it. I figured this out. And then I've run into one bad guy who killed me like 10 times in a row.
Yeah. Also, he has a torpedo gun.
Yeah. Batman. People will say Batman doesn't kill people.
Yes, he has always killed people.
He's killed a lot of people.
He has always killed people. Here's one of my bugaboos. A lot of the pop culture revolves around what was occurring at the time from then on. So video games got really popular around the time where Batman got gritty. So we're talking after The Dark Knight Returns. Before that, he was a little campier and people didn't take him as seriously.
Dude, I would love a modern Adam West take on Batman.
That'd be so good.
That could be very fun. Make a $20 game you just get on the arcade store or whatever.
My best recommendation for that is Batman Brave and the Bold.
Yeah, the Wii game. Or
the cartoon series.
Oh, okay, because they made a game based on that.
Yes, I know. Yeah, it's really good too.
Mm-hmm. The Batman for the NES, it feels a little like Ninja Gaiden. A lot of wall jumping. Yeah. It's all projectile weapons. They listed the bad guys on Wikipedia, and I was curious because I didn't know a lot of them. There's Deadshot, KG Beast, Maxi Zeus, Heatwave, Shakedown, and Night Slayer are all bad guys that are not end bosses.
Those last two I'm unfamiliar with.
I think some might be original for this, but then there's also Killer Moth, Electrocutioner, Firebug, and then, of course, the Joker.
Firebug, Killer Moth, I know those.
Did you have any notable platformers you wanted to bring up next?
Well, the Return of the Sinister 6 was okay.
That was okay. I'm glad you brought up another Nintendo one. This is one that I owned back in the day, and this is why I still have a fondness for Electro, because that was my first time seeing him.
You mean Maxwell Dillon?
Hey. Spider-Man, there's his rogue gallery just in full force already. The Sinister Six, how long has that concept been around?
The 70s. After they ran out of ideas, the editorial board for Marvel was notorious for just being like, I don't know, man, throw that spaghetti at the wall. If it sticks, we're ready to go.
Yeah. Stiltman, run it, print it.
They would have character Bibles, or what they're called. These are the things you can do, and these are the things you can't do. As long as you adhered to it and you didn't change things too drastically, because if you gave people a chance to change something, it'd have to be done by the appropriate creator.
As far as an NES game goes, it's pretty fun. The battling is not 100% tight, but you're Spider-Man and you're fighting some villains. It's a difficult NES game. This will keep your kid busy and it will make them happy. So something that's very difficult with these games is you go to Wikipedia and a game comes out called Batman Returns. And there's an NES, a Genesis, a Super Nintendo, a handheld, and a Sega CD. And some of them are just completely different games with the same box art.
Yeah.
Different developers, they made different things. One that I really enjoyed is Batman Return of the Joker, the Sega Genesis version. Batman has a gun. He shoots the whole time. You go into end boss rooms. You fight bosses. It's Mega Man. Tommy Tallarico did the soundtrack for the Genesis version.
Oh, for real?
It bumps. Oh, man.
Really?
That soundtrack bumps.
All right.
It's almost shameless how much it's not a Batman game. It's a Mega Man game.
Well, Batman isn't really known for using projectiles anyway.
Tell that to all the video games that have ever been made.
Well,
some do it better with the batarangs and other things. And there's something that, okay, Batman steals the rope slinging from Spider-Man, and Spider-Man steals gadgets from Batman.
In the 60s and late 60s, 70s, there's a lot of weird. Well, Peter Parker's a genius. He should be developing more stuff.
Yeah.
And then somewhere along the line, they said, no, let's keep this a little more simple.
Tobey Maguire's just going to have it white goo shoot out of his hand.
Really gross. Where are the sacks for that? So are they under his armpit or like?
One other Spider-Man platformer that I think is important is one that is often overlooked. The Amazing Spider-Man Web of Fire, a 32X exclusive game.
Never played it.
No one did. I haven't played it. I looked at some of the gameplay videos, and it looks fantastic. The web slinging looks really fun. It's got pre-rendered backgrounds similar to Donkey Kong, which might turn some people off, but the game looks very stunning. It's developed by Blue Sky Software, who created Vector Man 1 and Vector Man 2, which are games that I adored.
Well, yeah.
At least back in the day. I haven't played them
back
in a while.
In the day, certainly. Ask Matt Grenier about that.
I mean, it was fun. You get to fight Hydra and the new Enforcers with Daredevil. It looks like a cool game, but when you're on a system that was destined to sink and fail, I don't think there was much, opportunity to succeed. I don't know. I think this game is maybe the best Spider-Man platformer, but most people don't know about it. One thing that I'm judging Spider-Man games on is the swinging mechanic and the implementation of the webbing, like webs as a fighting technique.
Okay.
That's why I have a major problem with some of the later Spider-Man games, which they turn into God of War type gameplay, where he's using his webs as whips, and that doesn't make sense to me. He's supposed to be pulling and stopping and not doing straight up whipping around.
He gets clever.
Well, if he were to shoot a chair and swing a chair, I'm into that. Or shoot,
but not just turning it into like a club to beat someone.
That's
with.
all he does. It's just nonstop. You're using a whip, and it doesn't feel like Spider-Man fighting that I'm used to.
Well, and that actually leads me to, what do you want from a Spider-Man game?
It doesn't have to be a pure Spider-Man experience. It needs to be a fun game that also feels like a Spider-Man game. So when I say there's a Batman Mega Man game, it's a great game, but it's not necessarily a great Batman game.
Yeah, okay.
The Adventures of Batman and Robin.
So good.
The Sega Genesis one specifically. Now, if I play the Super Nintendo one is the one I have on my Classic.
That one's good too.
It's fine. It's not great. But the one for the Sega Genesis,
I mean, come on.
It is Cuphead levels of Contra and madness and boss battles. Although Batman throwing 3 batarangs like it's a gun nonstop, that bothers me. That's not Batman, but it is the most fun fucking game you'll play.
He has a lot of them.
That is my favorite platforming game out of all the Batman and Spider-Man.
I preferred the SNES one.
Oh man, I don't know. This one's got co-op. This one's got boss battles that are unique, dynamic. The SNES one's good too, though.
That one impressed me so hard. I ended up playing that for an hour.
I was watching the philosophy of Cuphead, some YouTube video, and they were just showing how the Adventures of Batman and Robin for the Genesis was one of their inspirations.
Really?
Spider-Man versus the Kingpin, not a great platforming game.
It was fine,
but you can take photos. You actually restore health in your apartment.
Yeah, that's cool.
There's voice acting, which is cool.
Weird. It looks crazy.
Yep.
And the fact that they could fit that on the Genesis, though, that's pretty cool.
And the Sega CD had some extra scenes, too, that they threw in where...
Oh, is that what I was saying?
I just love the multiple endings. You have one where just Mary Jane dies.
Where
Kingpin just lowers her in a vat of acid.
And then he lifts up the rope and then he looks at it and he goes, Mary Jane. And then he crumbles to his knees.
No.
He doesn't even go, no. The police just show up and everyone's like, well.
All right. Best platformer. Are you going to give it to Spider-Man or Batman for this round?
I'm giving it to Batman.
Batman for me as well. Spider-Man's got some fun things, but Batman's just got a lot of games that are of high quality and too fun to play. Spider-Man, I don't think they were really to nail a lot of what makes him great. Once you get into like the PlayStation 1 era, they're really able to fine-tune into Spider-Man's powers and make them feel powerful. And I don't know. I mean, I have power fantasies every night about being Spider-Man just because swinging through New York feels good.
I think Spider-Man failed in a lot of these older games because Spider-Man is about speed.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to encapsulate that on older systems.
We're going to move into best beat 'em up.
Let's do it.
Are
you a fan of beat 'em ups generally?
I love a good beat 'em up, and I think that they are most fun or possibly only fun if they're multiplayer and with somebody else.
Your Final Fights, your Streets of Rage,
your Turtles, your Simpsons, your 6-player Marvels, Avengers, X-Men cabinets, whatever they are. When you play them in the arcade,
that one's a 4-player one. That one sucks.
Those are great. The first one I'm going to bring up is Spider-Man the video game. This came out for the arcade in 1991.
I saw some footage of this. I never touched it.
Everyone considers Batman to be a loner. The funny thing is, he's got Robin, Nightwing. He's got, 3 Robins technically. He's got a Batgirl. And
Batman's messed up in the head.
Lego Batman's maybe the best Batman movie just because it really embraces the family aspect that he actually has. Yeah. But this game, it's a multiplayer beat 'em up for the arcade where you have to fight Kingpin and then Dr. Doom.
Black Cat and Hawkeye are in it.
Which makes sense. Okay. Black Cat, sure. Black Cat should be there. Hawkeye, I can concede that point. The fourth character...
Not really, though. They barely talk.
Compared to the fourth character, Hawkeye makes a lot of sense. Now, why would Namor
the Submariner.
Why would he show up there? Because this guy has an ego.
To you, that's Prince Namor.
I saw a clip of him comes over to Spider-Man and some other superhero.
Iceman.
And he says, "Why are you here? I thought only super beings were allowed, not super freaks."
Namor is actually in my top 10 favorite Marvel characters.
Me too. And he is, I think, the greatest untapped potential of the MCU. As far as a major big player and new character, he's the only one that's like a giant power that they haven't brought in.
Rumor has it they've already cast him.
Who is it? The Rock?
Keanu Reeves. Can you imagine Keanu Reeves screaming Imperious Rex?
I don't know what Imperious Rex means, but yes.
It's something he yells before he starts fucking shit up.
Yeah.
It basically means, I rule over you. I'm the king.
What's the name of the Prothean character in Mass Effect that you end up recruiting?
Jarek?
Yep. I have a feeling Namor is kind of like...
pull that
I think Namor kind of has that, like, we're so superior to you. Why are you talking to me?
Well, what's cool about Namor is he's actually a mutant. Atlanteans are blue.
But here he is, hanging out with Spider-Man, Hawkeye, and Black Cat fighting Kingpin.
Maybe this is like a vacation for him.
I just needed to get away, have some fun for a while. And he's wearing a Speedo in the game. And he
always has.
But he's just wearing a Speedo, walking through New York, punching people, throwing water at him.
See, I like that.
This was a fantastic beat 'em up. As far as Batman goes, what is your favorite beat 'em up for Batman?
Oh, this one's easy. It's Batman Returns for the SNES.
Oh, yes.
This was an easy decision for me. I played the NES version, which is still pretty stellar too. Let's say that it has planar issues. It's all based on hitboxes.
You think that you're able to hit a character and you're actually...
There's hitbox issues. it feels so good to punch in Batman Returns, and the enemies make sense. It's not too crazy. I like taking two enemies and bashing their heads together like in the movie. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know, with like limited button combos, as far as a one-player beat 'em up, you can't get much better than this.
The art design's fantastic. It looks exactly like the Tim Burton film. Yeah. And they grabbed definitely the costumes and the baddies from the movie.
Do you know what they're called? The Red Circus Gang.
Sounds like a Russian party.
Apparently, like in the lore of the two Tim Burton movies, this is just the remnants of Joker's gang forming their own.
Fun.
Yeah.
There was another very big game released in this beat 'em up category. At least it was raised up to be a big game. We have Spider-Man and Venom Maximum Carnage. Now, if you want to get us fanboy children excited, you slap out a red cartridge or a gold cartridge.
Yes.
You got my attention.
Yeah.
This was not just a video game. This was also, they were doing comics. This was part of the TV series.
Yeah.
And it's fun to have like a multimedia event. They're like, this is Spider-Man's new guy. And I remember thinking, oh shit, Venom's not like the big thing.
I'm going to lay it out there. I think anything beyond Venom is absolutely stupid.
It's overbaked for sure. I was excited back then.
No, you were supposed to be. 90s comics are the worst comics that have ever been produced. And quote me on that. They're not good. There are certain people I know who would want to kick the crap out of me by me saying that. But the art's usually pretty bad, and
it's a little
ideas are a little dumb.
I mean, it's just trying to get the attention of the young audience. It's just grabbing swaps. Them.
Oh, now there's this red one that binds to a serial killer. Let's get real edgy with it, 9 Inch Nails style.
As far as beat 'em ups go, I really do appreciate the web-based fighting, grabbing people around. Spider-Man uses his webs.
The swinging is pretty good.
The swinging's all right.
Getting to play as Venom is cool.
This was only single player, though, as well, I believe.
Yeah.
Which is a bummer.
The sprites were pretty high quality, though.
They looked great. The music was, of course, by alt metal band Green Jelly.
Never heard it. Green Jelly?
So I looked into it.
Do you like green jelly?
No. I like purple jelly. I like grape jelly. I like maybe some red jelly. I looked into it. So their 1994 album they released when this came out, the first song is called Carnage Rules. And the hook for the song goes, "Listen, all you fools, don't you know that carnage rules?" Okay. And it's the title theme for the game.
Okay.
And it's not, the title theme for the game's not bad. It's, there shouldn't be lyrics. There should never be anyone talking about how cool Carnage is in lyrics.
All right, whatever.
The dialogue and the art from this game is probably some of the most accurate to the comic book series thus far. They really wanted to just grab things from the comics, and the whole dialogue, whole characters for like cutscenes. That's cool.
I like the panels. I think that's awesome.
My favorite part was bad guys all have, instead of saying thug or big thug, it says Tom, Billy, Malcolm. The latest are Dana, Lizzie.
I didn't know that.
It's like in Katamari Damacy when you roll up Ted or something. I'm like, this is fun. Someone you fight in this game that I have a question for you about is
go for it.
Morbius. Does this guy deserve his own movie?
No. He's a 90s character.
Why would they choose Morbius of all Spider-Man villains to
get popular at the time?
But no, for a modern movie. He's got Jared Leto's playing him in an upcoming film.
Because the people who are coming of age and getting older, who are the main ones spending money at movies.
They like vampires?
No, they liked 90s comic books. Morbius, the living vampire. I honestly can't get into it on this podcast, but he looked a lot more goth, a little more femmy.
That's good. That's something that kids like.
Yeah, but I mean, that was getting in on your like Anne Rice.
One other game I want to talk about in platforming is Batman Forever, the arcade game, which is originally for the arcade. There were some PS1 and Saturn ports which weren't as good.
That one looks cool. I wish I'd played it.
Dude, it's so fucking quick and fast-paced.
Yeah.
It's almost too much where like the screen shakes a lot. An orgasm of sensory overload.
It's just visceral.
There's just visceral, like pow, kapams, like 10 Riddler medals pop up, this and that, but it looks fantastic.
I would love to play it. I've just never seen that cabinet anywhere.
I mean, it's fun, though, that you're also Val Kilmer and Chris O'Dowd, or whatever his name is.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. It's bizarre. All right. Best beat 'em up. Would you go Batman or Spider-Man?
Batman. Batman Returns specifically, yeah. I had a lot of fun with that game. I got through the first 3 levels before I put it down.
I'm going Batman as well.
First 2 are Batman right off the bat. Right off the bat.
Hey, oh my gosh.
Shit, dude.
All right. The next category is kind of a weird one.
Yes.
The bad and the bizarre.
Okay.
Let's talk about the bad and then the bizarre.
Can this be any game with Batman in it?
Yes.
Because I played, it was on the SNES you lent me. I played Justice League Task Force.
Ooh, no, I didn't play this one because I wasn't sure where we want to draw the line on this.
Justice League Task Force was awful. It's a fighting game. I didn't know when I started playing it. Justice League Task Force was an actual publishing title.
We're adding an impromptu category outside of the bad and the bizarre. We're talking about best fighting game now. That includes
shit.
Batman or Spider-Man. So,
Okay. All right. Because then I've already got the answer.
are you going to say Injustice?
No.
Are you going to say Marvel vs. Capcom?
Marvel vs. Capcom 2.
I think there are good Batman fighting games as well, though. Injustice is good. Mortal Kombat
I think
versus
they're good.
DC Universe.
I think they're good. Here's the problem that I always come up against, though. I'm a Marvel kid. I can admit when a game is better, but I'm a Marvel kid.
Dude, I love how DC's always just trying to ape off what's working for Marvel. It's like, they have Marvel versus Capcom. Fuck it. Let Batman punch Scorpion.
It got them a lot of money, to be fair.
It did, and it made Mortal Kombat fairly neutered for that game in particular.
Oh, that one's funny.
We can't have that much blood.
Of course not.
I love,
Why?
though, that Batman will run over Robin with the Batmobile, though.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same way that, like, in the previous Mortal Kombat X, where literally Johnny Cage can infanticide his own kid. What do you call it when they're not kids anymore, but you kill them?
Murder?
He'll kill Cassie Cage by dislocating her jaw.
Is it still infanticide? I don't know. I know Tyrion Lannister did almost all of them before he was done.
Yeah, there was that one time he took that girl to get an abortion.
No, he did fratricide, matricide.
He didn't do matricide.
His mother died when he was born.
That's not an intentional killing.
They'll give it to him.
Doesn't count.
Society gave it to him.
Fine, whatever.
Let's talk about Game of Thrones video games.
Oh, God, those have all been bad.
You know that Skyrim was almost going to be an not an Elder Scrolls, Game of Thrones game? They came to Bethesda and said, we wanted you to make a Song of Ice and Fire based universe. And they said, that's cool, but we're busy.
Really?
Yep. All right.
I listed Justice League Task Force.
Well, let's each talk about what we think is the best fighting game. I will say
Marvel versus Capcom 2.
And I'm going to say for Batman, it's got to be Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe. I agree with you, though. Spider-Man gets the edge as far as fighting games go.
Yeah, he has some really cool moves.
Let's get to the bad and the bizarre. Quest Probe featuring Spider-Man for the Apple II or Commodore 64. Spider-Man's second video game was a text adventure game.
I found a way to play this. I hated it.
When you look at two villains,
after 10 minutes.
When you look at two villains, you have to enter, I want you to attack Dr. Octopus. And it's like, I attack Dr. Octopus.
It was completely unmanageable. I don't like these text adventure games because in the style of Zork, if you don't say the exact right keywords.
Right. If there's a typo, I typo in my regular life all the time. And it's a hindrance for sure.
That's why autocorrect exists.
Let's get the bad ones out of the way because they just don't matter here.
I do have a runner-up just in case, and that would have been Batman Forever for the SNES.
Oh my God, they used the Mortal Kombat engine. What were they thinking?
Well, it's so awful. Like
they move like Mortal Kombat characters.
Yeah. Batman looks like he's an old-timey boxer. He's constantly just doing the thing where he's like, yeah, put him up. He goes to Arkham Asylum. The opening to it looks really cool.
It looks cool. It doesn't ever once play good.
It shows a radar going down the streets of Gotham, and then it shows Arkham Asylum, which exists on an island in this universe, which is pretty rad.
The only thing I could properly compare this to is Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero.
Okay.
It's that bad where an engine that's not designed for platforming, exploration, action, adventure is being pushed into it. Bad game.
Yeah.
Did you know that the first Marvel game was the first Spider-Man game for the Atari 2600?
I owned it.
Did you know Spider-Man and Captain America in Doctor Doom's Revenge? This game was for the Commodore, Amiga, all those old systems that if Tom was here, he'd say, "Oh, I played those when I was 47."
Back during the Great War.
During the old WW1, I played this game. This was a 2D fighter, kind of. It wasn't an action-adventure game, but it would be one-on-one you versus villains such as Lobo, Grey Gargoyle, Machete, Boomerang, Oddball, Hobgoblin, Batroc the Leaper.
Batroc the Leaper was in the movies. Did you know that?
No. Which movie?
Captain America, the Winter Soldier. You know, in the opening segment, the guy he fights is Batroc the Leaper, technically. In
Avengers 2, there's like a minor point of Taskmaster, who is going to be Black Widow's like main villain in the next one.
Yeah, it's
They're too thought out, man. They're too good.
Well, that's Kevin Feige for you.
Okay, so I think that covers the bad games.
Yep.
And you know what's great about bad games is they don't actually contribute to our decision on who has the better video games. But I want to talk about the bizarre games. Now, what I was most excited about was finding out that Spider-Man has 2 Metroidvania-style games for the Nintendo DS. I had no idea, and this is extremely exciting to me. I watched gameplay. It follows all of the tropes, and you know what's fun is that you can move...
You're going to have to tell us what the titles are.
The titles are... This is one of those tricky things, too, where you have Spider-Man Web of Shadows and Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. Mm-hmm. These games are absolutely, almost completely unrelated to the other ones. Except for the fact that with Shattered Dimensions, you're changing between characters and universes. But they are traditional Metroidvanias in that you're traversing through a space. You have a map on your DS. You have to beat certain areas and bosses to unlock new spots. It looks great. People say they play fantastic. I was completely unaware of them. My first thought, though, when I heard this was, that's fun. I think Batman is more primed for a Metroidvania-style game where he's getting new, his gadgets.
He is like Samus in a lot of ways, yeah. That is a killer.
Batman would be such a good Metroidvania-style game. I was surprised. As far as bizarre games go, I was very excited about this. So that's my proposition for the best Spider-Man in the bizarre category. The best bizarre Batman game is a 2013 arcade game called Batman. It's an arcade vehicular combat game. Boss battles and objectives. You can use like 10 different Batmobiles. You can choose which Batmobile you do.
Yeah, that looks fun.
That game looks amazing.
Yeah. I really want to play it. We should find an arcade near here that actually has that.
Not only is this game, you can choose all the different legendary Batmobiles to play as, which is fun. You have your keypad. You can keep track of your profile. That's what they use those for.
Oh, really?
You actually have to use that in the game at different points. So we have to like defuse bombs and enter certain number codes and stuff while you're driving.
Oh, that's sick.
I was like, what? Batman.
That's really cool. Notoriously, a lot of these licensed racing type games, they're really bad. Have you ever played the Mario Kart for the arcade? The one developed by Namco?
I mean, it's fine. It's not good.
It's really not good.
It's absolutely fine. It's better when you have 4 players, and it's more about talking shit than actual gameplay.
Yeah, I just wish it worked well.
Out of those 2 games, what wins the best bizarre game?
I'm gonna go with Batman.
Batman. We're at 3-1.
All right.
Would you rather talk about the best comic book / animated series tie-in?
That one.
Okay, we'll talk about that next.
I have a lot to say.
I just want to suggest the first topic because there's one that I think influences all the others.
Sure.
Spider-Man 2000 for the PS1.
Okay.
This introduced web slinging and fighting mechanics that I think all of these other superhero games kind of derive a lot from. This is for the PS1, the 64, and the Dreamcast. This was the first one with Neversoft and Treyarch, which became very important. I mean, once Activision got its hands on Spider-Man, they did a lot with it.
Yeah.
Game changer. This had the web swinging. It didn't attach to anything, but it still felt really cool, even though you couldn't land on the ground. The web battles.
Because the ground was full of toxic mist.
You couldn't land on the ground. Oh, my God. I mean, that's a problem now, but just back then being able to swing between a building felt very cool. And the web battles.
It's contrived, but The Amazing Spider-Man from 2011, the movie,
it
had that plot almost.
This introduced using webs as for fighting. In a big way, there's multiple different things you could do. And that's
you can shoot them out of your wrist.
From having a PS1 controller with all those extra buttons, you were able to have a little more nuance to fighting style and switching between combat techniques.
Light attack, strong attack, and then web attack.
Narrated by Stan Lee, which he started doing a lot of after this game.
Yes, he did.
He was a playable costume character in like The Amazing Spider-Man 1 or 2. I forget which one.
Back when he admitted that he's a co-creator of Spider-Man and not just the creator.
I didn't know that.
It's Steve Ditko, man. You didn't know Steve Ditko?
You're the comic book guy.
You're going to always see Bob Kane attached to Batman.
But it's actually
created by Bob Kane.
But it's Dick Grayson.
No, it's Bill Finger.
Bill Finger. Okay, I forget the name. I knew it was a body part.
I knew it was a bird or a body part. No, yeah. Steve Ditko, he basically came up with Spider-Man. Stan Lee, for as much as I love the guy, he's eccentric, he's awesome. I really don't think he did too much in helping to design how all this worked. There's something called the Marvel method of comic writing, where the writer kind of just gets to be like, well, you know, like this and this could happen. And then the artist has to be like, I'll draw all that. Yeah. And then he goes off to his corner and basically does all the hard work. I hate the Marvel method.
You're saying your preferred method is that the person that is drawing the comic is also the one coming with the concepts and the creation?
No.
Because that's traditionally not how it works, right?
Because if you're going to write, then write it all. The Alan Moore style of writing.
So
write every little detail you can, because then there's no way that you can't say that none of it is your idea.
Yeah.
And then someone gets to fulfill your vision that maybe they didn't have on their own. A lot of artists, they don't also like to be writers.
Yeah.
A lot of them just want to draw the cool shit.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do a detailed enough script and you give it to them, then they can achieve that. Whereas in the early days of Marvel, Stan Lee would basically be like, what if
there's a spider guy?
What if there was a man who had all the proportional abilities of a spider? And then the artist would be like, I guess I'll make the coolest costume ever and everything recognizable about it, and you'll take the credit for it. And that's kind of how it worked with Batman too. But
you mentioned cool costumes. Thank God for Steve Ditko, because the Spider-Man 2000 game introduced a concept that I think this is the first, at least, superhero iteration that was a big game, where alternate costumes were unlockable.
Yes.
From the history of the character. And it wasn't just, you get these 2 extra costumes, which would now be DLC out the wazoo. They just they're throwing in every Spider-Man costume we got our hands on. Just play with them, have fun.
Yeah.
It adds replayability. It's just like a fun mix-up. When I'm playing the newest Marvel game, I am exclusively using the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man suit, and I'm pretending it's part of the Tobey Maguire verse.
I always think about Into the Spider-Verse, because technically, what's the guy's name from New Girl?
Yeah, they were going to have Tobey Maguire do the voice for that, but they backed away from it. Because that would have been great. Having the old...
It wouldn't have been funny.
It wouldn't have been funny, but it would have been cool to have that character now. Since Sam Raimi is doing the new Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and I hope it gets fucking weird. I hope that Doctor Strange gets lost in the multiverse, and there's moments with Tobey Maguire. You can throw in like Nicolas Cage's Ghost Rider or any of the Netflix series. Get all of that weird shit and just have like little moments with all of them, even if it's just a fucking cameo. If you wanted to get Daredevil or the Punisher as even just make sure that they exist in the universe, you could have Doctor Strange pull 2 strings, and then you could have the Punisher from the Netflix series be official now.
That makes sense.
Yep, I think that'd be fun. And if you had Tobey Maguire make a cameo, you have my attention.
You know what?
I would be into it.
Yeah.
Because Tobey Maguire, Marvel can thank him, because the Fantastic Four movie from 1980 or whatever it was fine. The one way back when, but there was not a lot of good Marvel movies.
Like the 90s one?
But
the ones that they had to get to keep the rights.
Yep, that they never released.
Yeah.
The Spider-Man trilogy and X-Men were very responsible for making superhero movies popular. So show a little love. Plus, you own X-Men now. Give Hugh Jackman a cameo in there. You could do it if you wanted. Spider-Man even had a what-if mode for endgame content where they could like say, what if this happened instead of that?
So do you know who's talking during those segments?
The Brainiac dudes with the capes.
That is Uatu the Watcher. He lives on the moon, and he observes sentient life in order to make sure that no one disturbs them, but he always does anyway. They observe all sentient life, and they catalog it throughout all of time. And the rule throughout all of it is that you're supposed to never interfere. Okay. Whereas Uatu, who lives on the moon, he's constantly like, hey, Captain America, if you don't do this, you're going to die. And Captain America's like, thanks, Uatu.
Is it just because
salutes?
Is it just because he likes Captain America?
I mean, this was just an example. He does it for a lot of things.
What else would you say is an excellent comic book / animated series tie-in game?
My number one is Ultimate Spider-Man. I played it for the GameCube.
Yeah, that's when they released after Spider-Man 2. So they were already excellent at the web swinging.
This one was actually made in tandem with the Ultimate Universe, which was super popular at the time.
Yeah.
Which had the creators, Mark Bagley, the artist, and Brian Michael Bendis, who is, let's just say he's had a bit of a fall from grace, but he was the most popular writer of the time. Ultimate Spider-Man made Marvel so much money, they got out of bankruptcy. The Ultimate Universe saved Marvel from death, but it ended up becoming trash about 5 years later.
As long as it got him through that period, that's all that matters.
I chose this one specifically because Brian Michael Bendis helped write it, and they used Mark Bagley's art to create the look and feel of the environments. In terms of how it fits in directly to the comic books.
Yeah.
They retcon it later, but when you play it at the time, it really feels like you're playing a continuation of this game. Mm-hmm. I wasn't a huge fan of the Ultimate Spider-Man series. I had a friend growing up who did, and I read most of them through the trade paperbacks and stuff like that. In terms of faithfulness, this is without a doubt on the money. Mm-hmm. This has to be the winner.
There's one contentious point about that game that people are a little unhappy about.
Sure.
With the web swinging, mid-swing, you have to climb.
Sure.
You have to like hit a climb button to like get higher if you want to get more realistic.
Have you ever played it?
I haven't played it.
It fits in really well.
It looks like a great game. You know what's tough to do is argue for really Batman games in this one. Dude. We should talk about a couple Batman games in this, though. Let's start with Batman Vengeance. It was a PS2, GameCube, and Xbox game for 2001, made by Ubisoft Montreal. It's an action-adventure game with what I think is the strongest point is you have Batman and Joker voiced by Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill. If you want to get people excited, you throw them in there. It was generally really well received. It's based on the new Batman adventures, and it's going to be that classic. You're exploring a level, you're hitting a bunch of guys, and then there's some moments where characters interrupt you.
It looked a lot like the series.
There was some wonky perspective shifts, which weren't good, where if you wanted to go to first-person mode, which you had to at some points, you also couldn't fight or do this and that. There was different controls, and you have to switch up like mid-gameplay.
Yeah.
I mean, apart from that, Batman Vengeance, I think is probably, Batman the Brave and the Bold for the Wii, which you mentioned before, also would fall into this category.
I really like that series.
Yeah.
But more as an animated series.
They tried to introduce a new villain to the series just through video games with Batman the Rise of Sin Shu, I want to say his name.
Well, you're pretty close. I think it's supposed to be a play on like Sun Tzu, but...
That was another game that came out for that same generation where you could play as Batman, Robin, Batgirl, or Nightwing, another beat-em-up style game.
I recall playing the Game Boy Advance version because he never got adapted into any actual of the fiction.
No, it was I think maybe 14 years later or something that he wound up showing up in a Suicide Squad story.
All right. I played the Game Boy Advance version at a friend's house. I popped it in for maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It looked cool.
It's supposed to be adequate at best. Compared to what it's going up against, then there's also Batman Beyond Return of the Joker. I think the only thing that's cool is that you're playing as, Terry instead of Bruce.
I loved Batman Beyond.
I don't think it's gotten its proper justice in a video game, outside of the fact that in the Arkham series, you can put on the Batman Beyond skin.
Which doesn't really look like it. One of the things I will say is that's actually a perfect synthesis of these two titles. Batman Beyond is basically Batman as Spider-Man.
Yeah. I don't know Batman Beyond.
You've never seen Batman Beyond?
No. They have the Spider-Verse now where they can go into different things. You need to have some like new Batman movies. If they had a separate Batman Beyond series outside of the DCU, that'd be amazing.
So I'm going to tell you something crazy.
Okay.
So in the Bruce Timm verse is what they call it.
Yeah.
Where Bruce Timm, the guy who made the first Batman, the animated series, and did all the art style, and then he did Superman, and then Justice League, and the list goes on and on. You'll know what a Bruce Timm series looks like just based off of its looks. Mm-hmm. In that fiction, Bruce Wayne gets old, gets no love. He has no love of his life. He has a dog.
No Anne Hathaway.
No Anne Hathaway. He's alone, living in the mansion. Alfred's dead. Terry shows up one day and he's like, I guess I will train you to be Batman because you figured out that I was Batman. And then Terry's like, yes. There is an episode of Justice League Unlimited where Terry finds out that he's actually the biological son of Bruce Wayne.
That's a little too contrived almost, I want to say.
It's not contrived. It actually kind of works.
Okay. Well, that's
because
cool.
His father was infertile.
They should make the Batman Arkham people need to make a Batman Beyond series next then, in my opinion. It would make more sense, too, because if it was a half Spidey Batman, he'd make more sense for him zinging around the city like he does.
Well, the biggest rumor is that there's a Justice League game they've been working on.
We'll see. As far as the best comic book / animated series tie-in, Dylan, I think I know what you're going with.
It's Ultimate.
You're going Ultimate Spider-Man. I'm going to say Spider-Man, the 2000. Either way, Spider-Man wins. We're at 3-2.
Okay, yeah.
We're going to take a quick break here so you can hear from some of the other absolutely amazing podcasts from the Greenlit Podcast Network, which we are a very happy member of.
Hey folks, it's Asif Khan, CEO, Editor-in-Chief, over there at ShackNews.com. Give a listen to the Shackcast, the official Shack News podcast of Shack News, over there on the Greenlit Podcast Network.
Fans of video games, history, or video game history will definitely want to listen to Retronauts. Each week, Bob Mackey and myself, that's Jeremy Parrish, dive into the stories behind the greatest games of the past and the history behind the hits of today. Check us out every Monday on the Greenlit Podcast Network.
Spider-Man versus Batman, the best movie tie-in.
Do you want me to say a winner right away, or are we going to go through?
Let's tease the audience for a little bit.
All right.
Let's talk about a real big stinky fart. It's called Batman and Robin for the PlayStation 1. It came out in 1998 from Probe Entertainment. This is their first attempt at an action-adventure sandbox game for Batman and Robin.
Don't you dare talk bad about Probe. Have you seen my Probe Entertainment tattoo?
I've seen your Probe. This game was truly terrible.
I haven't even seen this. I haven't touched it.
There are open world moments where you have to like drive between locations. The whole point of the game is you have to discover enough clues in a location to move forward. There is, a Mr. Freeze battle at the end that you have to fight him 3 times. The gameplay looks absolutely atrocious. You're playing as George Clooney, which is whatever it is.
One of the better Batman, if we're going to really...
You know what they tried to do was move Batman into an open world environment, which didn't work for him here, but hey, I'll give you the 2 out of 10 for trying.
Shoot for the stars.
Everyone talks very highly about Spider-Man 2 because of this web swinging. But first, I want to talk about Spider-Man, the first movie.
Okay.
Because I didn't play Spider-Man 2, but I had this game for the PS2.
Really?
And the GameCube now. Developed by Treyarch. It was fantastic for me.
I mean, both of them are good.
This one's got Tobey Maguire and Willem Dafoe.
Bad voice acting.
No, Toby's phoning it in. Willem Dafoe's fine.
Well, they got Bruce Campbell too, right?
Bruce Campbell is in all 3 movie versions of the games, announcing and talking shit to you.
Yeah. I swear to God.
10 out of 10 on your Bruce Campbell. Thank you.
I watched a lot of...
Bruce Campbell's going to be in the MCU with the new Doctor Strange movie too. I swear to God, he better be.
No, yeah, I watched a lot of YouTube videos about this. Everyone had a Macho Man Randy Savage impression to do.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
I can't cotton to it.
You know what's cool is that after you beat the game, there's a whole separate story mode where you can play as Harry as the Green Goblin, which doesn't necessarily make sense movie-wise. It's got such replayability. It's got all the costumes, but what we really want to talk about is Spider-Man 2.
The best one.
People put this up as the best Spider-Man video game ever because of Jamie Fristrom. This guy is a web-slinging god because he worked at the first one and he tried to, late in the game, introduce a physics-based web-slinging where
it actually attached to objects in the field.
He said it's not attaching to things. So he created a system where it would scan the environment, kind of like echolocation, find the best place to attach a web to, and it would be physics-based. And this was something that they were afraid of back in the day because Treyarch, they were experimenting with skateboarding and snowboarding physics-based games, and they weren't as fun and intuitive.
Well, even then, gravity was hard to mimic. It still is in a lot of video games. Let's say you beat someone up in a video game, the way they ragdoll, it's not exactly there's a way that a character has to stand and sit and move in order to feel believable. And when it comes to Spider-Man, it has to feel like you're actually moving through something, like there's a momentum to it.
Yeah.
And getting that correct is extremely hard to do. Back then, when this came out, I remember in my middle school, people fucking talking about this.
Yeah.
Even like non-nerds.
Yeah.
Like me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let that be a testament. It worked.
And this guy, Jamie Freestrom, he also, this game introduced a new combat system that had the uppercut, where you knock someone up in the air and then Spider-Man attacks after them, and also Spider Sense as a battle mechanic, which I was surprised to learn that this was a counter opportunity thing, because I thought clearly it happened before, but I thought the first big superhero video game with that would have been Arkham Asylum. As far as superhero games, I wasn't familiar with that showing up before as part of a fighting scenario. I will say this, though. It makes a million times more sense for Spider-Man to have a counter opportunity than Batman.
Well, Batman is honed as a fighter.
If Batman's looking one way, he wouldn't have something saying counter's coming this way. Spider-Man should know a rocket's coming in and then look that way, you know?
Right.
Spider sense is a real thing.
Yes. I totally think it works better for Spider-Man.
And another fun thing about Spider-Man 2, there's a Mysterio battle. He's not in the movie, but he's in the game. And you encounter him. His life bar charges up like 8 times, like 8 full life bars.
No, that's from Spider-Man 2000.
No, this is in Spider-Man 2.
Is it?
He punches him one time, and it completely depletes.
Mysterio is a funny villain.
He's all brains, 0 brawn.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Do you want to talk about the only other Batman film we could bring
Batman
into
Begins?
this? Yeah.
Actually, not bad. I played this.
It's a fine game.
Have you played it?
I played it a little bit back in the day, yeah.
It's a little on rails. I'm going to be absolutely honest with our listeners, and feel free to roast me if you haven't already. I don't pay attention.
He has no social media.
I have
He
no
will not
social
know.
media. Come after me. I don't really like Christopher Nolan's Batman at all. I think he's dumb.
I don't think the movies are bad.
I think the movies are good.
Batman Begins is great. Dark Knight has such an exceptional Joker that it gets away with it.
But
The Dark Knight Rises is bad. I love that Batman Begins is one of the only like full entire Bruce Wayne's childhood to the full adult story, and it explains where it all comes from. Scarecrow is the major comic book villain-ish because Ra's al Ghul doesn't wear a mask, but otherwise, I mean, I love that Falcone plays a big part.
Nolan tried to make a plausible Batman. I'm sorry. The way that Bale plays Batman is so dumb.
You talking about the voice?
A lot of it is the voice.
Yeah.
But it's also the suit that he wears, too. To me, watching it now, it's kind of embarrassing. There are things that take me out of things.
I don't know. The suit seems fine, except in the first one, he can't turn his head. That's only in the first one.
In the second one, he can barely turn his head either.
He turns it. He can turn his head though.
And he has this thing where now you won't be able to unsee this.
He's not wearing hockey pads.
Just look at his mouth. Where the mouth is constantly just like, why would you create a suit where you can't breathe? Because he's a fighter. It's not just that. His mouth is constantly open and his lower lip is hanging down. And then he's constantly going like this. Brad,
This is the birth of a new villain here.
this is me, the mouth breather.
Oh, that's a good one.
I'm the mouth breather. And his cowl also has a permanent angry face, so it just looks like he's like
There's
half
like-
stupid and angry the entire
It
time.
looks like you can see his mouth, but it's really like one of those shirts where you can see like a set of 8-pack or something.
Constantly looks like his face is doing this.
Yep, so that was Batman Begins. Spider-Man 3 for the PS3 360 was a hot, wet fart with bugs and glitches.
I never played it.
What's fun is there are QuickTime events where if you don't hit the right trigger, Spider-Man, instead of swinging his web, just falls on his face.
There's a lot of that.
I think that's funny, though. There's the Amazing Spider-Man movie games, which
Those were middling, from what I understand.
I think what's interesting is that the first one takes place after the movie, and it's an in-between type scenario where it continues the story instead of just tells the story of the movie. You actually let Kurt Connors out of prison to help you fight someone. You let the lizard out.
Oh, that's dumb.
Amazing Spider-Man 2 had an interesting web swinging mechanic that didn't ultimately work super great, where you actually alternate between triggers, left and right, to swing webs.
That's actually really cool.
It's cool. They didn't quite figure it out, and ultimately that game was panned very bad. But one other game that we just need to briefly mention is Spider-Man Friend or Foe. It's not a great game.
I don't even know what that is.
Well, it's a beat 'em up co-op game, but it is also, it takes the 3 movies and it's a what if retelling. There's a villain that is making you re-encounter these baddies from the movies. A shitty beat 'em up, stylized, kid-friendly fucking Kingdom Hearts battle system. It's not great, but it's interesting that they took the 3 movies and they made a spin-off game based on that. So I think we agree who has the best movie tie-in.
Spider-Man.
So yeah, we're at 3-3 right now. So,
okay, interesting.
So the best original story / best original IP, something that wasn't directly based on a comic book series or based on a previous movie.
Right.
I mean, they're all loosely based, but I don't think anyone would say that the Arkham Asylum, Arkham games, or like Marvel's Spider-Man or this or that.
They all borrow, but I mean, the movies do that too. That's whatever. I mean, let's just say it. We know what the winner is, right?
Let's first talk about some other ones. I don't think there's an obvious winner. I think there are 2 ones that warrant a lot of discussion.
Okay, bring them up. Let's hear them.
Let's talk about Lego Batman, the video game.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind. I shouldn't have discounted that right away. I wasn't even thinking of the Lego series.
Now, I'm not going to include Lego Marvel's The Avengers game, but Lego Batman gets his own trilogy of Lego games.
Now, there's a part of me that wants to include Lego Marvel superheroes.
But it's not Lego Spider-Man.
It's not Lego Spider-Man. But I mean, neither was Justice League Task Force.
Which ultimately wasn't in a decision.
No, it wasn't, was it?
Lego Batman Action Adventure. This is the first Lego game to have an original story outside of Lego Star Wars, Lego this or that. It spawned 2 sequels. Those Lego games are fun.
I didn't even add that to my list. I did play that.
There's so many different games, though. It's hard to keep track of them all. And then there are also the Batman Telltale series. I have a quote here from Tom from Milwaukee.
Whoa, it's him.
It says co-host of Hair of the Dogcast. This is a long one, so this is the Batman Telltale series. The gameplay is Telltale style, so either you like it or you don't, but that means the games focus more on Batman the detective than Batman the kick-ass vigilante. I appreciated this angle. But most of all, it's the most subverted version of the Batman story I've ever seen. I'm kind of shocked that DC allowed Telltale to play with the characters and backstory like they did, but I love that. So for examples, besides that Brad and Dylan are much better podcast hosts, the Wayne family is a crime family. I added that Wayne family part in.
I agree.
The Penguin is your childhood friend. You get committed to Arkham Asylum and become buddies with the Joker, who helps break you out. And Vicky Vale is the big villain. If you're a Batman fan who has a casual knowledge of the usual story and characters, and can handle some narrative-driven experience with classic Telltale jank, I say it's definitely worth playing. This is Tom signing off. That was a quote from Tom directly.
Hey, listen, thanks, Tom. I don't know who you are, but I really like that you wrote into us. I agree with you pretty much.
Except that we hate those games.
I don't like the Telltale games. That's what I was going to say. Those Telltale games can, like, eat a butt. The only one I played through entirely was a prequel to the Fables comic book series, which was The Wolf Among Us. I thought it was good.
Yeah.
It was fine. You know when a character says, this character will remember that? They don't.
No.
You can usually change it about halfway through. I admire the script writing. I admire the storytelling.
Also, it'd make a really good choose your own adventure book instead of a video game because that's all that it is.
Well,
literally, you could take all those Telltale games, slap them into one little youth novel.
Youth novel. Young adult novel.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. People aren't going to read Choose Your Own Adventures anymore.
They don't want to play those games either.
Hey,
but we appreciate Tom's comments about us as podcasters.
One thing I'll say that is really cool about what Tom said is when you think about Batman now, the general populace doesn't think of Batman as a detective. They don't.
Which is a shame because that is half of his strong points.
So one of my best friends, she has a dog named Bruce. And I'm like, is he good at solving crimes? And she's like, oh, I get it because haha, he's named after Batman. And I said, Bruce, the dog, the world's greatest dog detective. And she said, what do you mean? Batman, the world's greatest detective. And she's like, what?
He's named for George Clooney from the movie.
Oh, George Clooney, world's greatest detective.
Yes.
Oh, he's like Sherlock Clooney.
Sherlock Clooney.
Yeah, but people don't know that Batman is supposed to be a detective. The greatest part about Batman is his mind. It's not supposed to be that he's like some badass kung fu master.
It's the mind plus the filthy rich plus the fighting ability.
This is why this is so exemplary of what I was saying before. The video games, they came about in popularity after The Dark Knight Returns, which completely flipped the script on Batman entirely. So we're getting more action rather than actual crime solving.
I mean, that's probably my biggest problem with those early games is Batman would not just side scroll punch people. He would swing up, avoid fights as much as he could to just get to the wherever he was going.
Or make people disappear with spear guns.
Yeah, he wouldn't punch every clown that he saw until he got an answer. He would just go to the answer.
He's always been a stealth master, though.
Let's talk about a couple Spider-Man games before we get to the two Titans. Spider-Man Web of Shadows. So remember when Mass Effect came out and everything was morality-based for a while?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Did you ever wish you were Spider-Man and you had the chance to either make out with Black Cat or not? Because everyone would have made out with her, right?
Oh, yeah. Now, hold on. If I was still with Mary Jane, would I make out with Black Cat?
Are you a Paragon or a Renegade? Are you the symbiote or the Peter Parker?
Now, listen. I'm a...
Now, listen here.
I'm a Spider-Man on the streets and a Peter Parker in the sheets. I'm like two different people. I don't know. Maybe Spider-Man is in love with Black Cat.
We both have the web shooter. So Black Cat's kind of like a sidekick, right?
No. Black Cat is her own character. She's literally a ripoff of Catwoman.
She's the Black Cat.
Well, this is what the comic book industry used to do back in the day. They would have characters that they would deliberately steal. Did you know that Thanos is a ripoff of a DC character?
Which one?
Darkseid.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's unoriginal. Thanks, Thanos.
Thanos is better written because Jim Sterling wrote him. But in terms of what we're going for here, obviously Black Cat is just supposed to be a femme fatale thief.
So Web of Shadows had a morality system that ultimately felt a little weak. It featured Luke Cage and some other characters. No one has too many strong feelings about Web of Shadows, but there are a pair of games that came out as well for Spider-Man. Shattered Dimensions, developed by Beanox for the PS3, the Wii, and the 360. This came out in 2010. This had you jumping between 4 different Spider-Man characters. Can you name all 4?
Yeah, Miguel O'Hara, not O'Hara. Miguel blah blah blah. He's Spider-Man 2099.
Okay.
There's Spider-Man Noir.
His name is Nicolas Cage.
There's the Tobey Maguire one.
The Amazing Spider-Man and the Ultimate Spider-Man.
Thank you.
You know what's cool about this?
Ultimate Spider-Man. That's one I was missing.
You know what's cool about this is that they took 4 different voice actors that played Spider-Man before, and they got to voice the 4 different characters.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
They all play slightly differently. And they have villains that have been...
You ever played this game?
I haven't. It looks fun. It looks cool.
It is probably the best Spider-Man game.
It's got...
I played this 2013. I got it for $20. It plays really well, especially the 2099 parts.
That's the very fast stuff, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of action scenes. It's skydiving. Noir is stealth. The Ultimate stuff is a mix. The regular shit is just pretty straight up Spider-Man stuff. And then they all meet up. It was written by Dan Slott.
Who went on to write multiverse stuff, right?
Well, he did Spider-Verse in 2015.
Yeah, because I heard this was the first merging of the Spider-Verses in a big way.
Do you know what the original plot of the Spider-Verse stuff is?
No.
In the vein of Morbius, there is a reality jumping band of vampires who specifically feed off spider people from every universe.
It sounds like a bad Shining sequel almost. Yes.
And that's what happens. And then so it's basically them defeating that group of vampires. And at the time, which there aren't a lot of video games featuring Miles Morales right now, but this would have been a great time to introduce him. They just chose not to.
Well, what I liked about Shattered Dimensions is it's got linear levels again. It almost feels like a throwback to the platforming action adventure stuff where there's a beginning and an end, and it's catered to that experience versus collect all of these things, defuse all these Taskmaster bombs, go collect all of these pigeons. There's something to say about a linear experience where they can hone in on what you're experiencing better.
Well, Spider-Man from 2000 for the PlayStation 1 was pretty linear as well when you really get down to it. There was a bit of an open world aspect to it, but it was relatively straightforward.
The sequel to this, Spider-Man Edge of Time,
It wasn't good.
It wasn't good. It wasn't loved. We don't need to talk about that here. It's more of the same, but not as good. So let's talk about the Arkham trilogy.
It's good.
I think you're with me in the camp that Arkham Asylum
Is the best.
is the best Batman game.
It's the best Batman game, period.
It is. It's almost Metroidvania.
It is.
You're on Arkham,
that's exactly right.
You're on Arkham Asylum.
Well,
you need to get this to go there. You need to get this to go there. You're unlocking parts of the game.
Yes.
It's brilliant. You know what
feels right?
You know what doesn't work for Batman is Arkham Knight, Arkham City. I love some of it, but when you are just grappling hook everything and you're shooting across the city like crazy, it doesn't feel like Batman. It feels fun to fly. It feels fun to shoot.
There are people who are going to absolutely, like, if we saw them in the streets, and they were fans of us,
Yeah.
God forbidding. But
I'm going to go ahead and say that Arkham Knight is probably the most fun Batman game. I don't think it's not the most accurate Batman game by a long shot.
so best feeling, Arkham Knight. In
It's
terms of
so much
controls.
fun. It's so much fun. And
I even like the Batmobile segments, whereas other people didn't.
I loved them. They're fun tank battle games.
It changes up the gameplay in an appropriate way that doesn't take away from anything. We talked ad nauseum about Final Fantasy VII last month.
Yeah, we did.
Those mini games completely take you out of what you're doing, whereas in Arkham Knight, playing in the Batmobile actually feels really good. What you're doing, the cognitive dissonance, is a little bit crazy because apparently you're shooting rubber rounds and like mild explosives, not to like kill them, but you're killing them. If you're really going to get into how these super people beat up the common man, you're giving them CTE anyway. They're going to murder their family even if they reform.
Arkham Asylum is a good game.
Fuck me.
Arkham Asylum is a great game. It's got a contrived ending.
I had this many beers.
The Joker's bad at the end, turning into a boss battle.
The giant Joker?
Yes.
Yeah, that sucked.
It's not necessary, but it's still fine.
It's easy too.
Arkham City, I think, is still a great story. I just don't like how Batman moves. It's all the movement base that I think doesn't work.
Wait, what don't you like? Is it the way he
traverses the city?
Well, it's basically Spider-Man.
There's this problem with these two characters where they need to become the same thing. Spider-Man has a lot of gadgets in the new Spider-Man game.
Which is good, though.
Which is fine, but to me, that's not where the character is.
So,
and Spider-Man, okay, so Batman doesn't need to grappling hook between every building, and then you tap X a million times, and you shoot up 200 feet above the building,
so the
and then you glide down.
Let me say this, because I've read a lot of comic books. When you have these characters, they evolve over time. What I really love about like the new Spider-Man movies is that they actually say, no, Peter Parker would actually be a little bit more clever. He would have like drones, or he would have these things that he would actually take advantage of. Because why wouldn't he? If he's fighting crime, let's say you went out into the streets and the streets were full of criminals every single night. Would you just bring your baseball bat, or would you bring your baseball bat and a series of guns?
10 guns?
Yes, exactly. The reality here is that these things adapt to their times.
I'm just saying, for what people know a character for, Spider-Man in the movies doesn't use a lot of them unless he's got the Tony Stark suit and he doesn't know what they all do. And it's fun to watch him learn some of them, but I don't know. It's a different thing with the new Spider-Man game where this is your spider drone, this is your spider bot, this is your spider thing. I like having web-based combat where you can do different things with your webs, where you like ball it up and you can shoot like a charge web, or you can create like a little protective barrier for yourself and explode out of it.
Right.
Those things are fun. I don't know. What we're getting back to with Batman needing to move around the city, kind of like Spider-Man with his grappling hook. If they were to implement a way where you can traverse around the city that's less tapping a shitload and flying.
That's what they tried to do with the Batmobile.
And also with the Batmobile, people are unhappy with the way Arkham Knight has those Batmobile sequences. I think it's great. Drive your Batmobile where you're going and shoot out of it and then go on the building you need to. But
that's the best part.
But if you want to get from this point of the city to the next, you should have to go down to the Batmobile, drive it over, and then shoot up. If you want to fly across slowly from rooftop to rooftop, you should be able to, but I don't want to be able to grappling hook, shoot up 200 feet above a building, glide down, grappling hook. Batman's ripped. He's not that ripped. No, if you want it to be an accurate Batman game, that fact aside, Arkham Knight is one of the most fun games I've played out of this entire series.
Accuracy. Come on.
You know what I'm talking about, though, right?
No, I know what you're talking about. Like, there's no way he could survive any of it. Like, literally, his arm would rip off.
Yeah.
We're talking about comic book characters.
I'm surprised that you're on this side of the debate. I thought you'd be on the other one because, I mean, so wait.
No. Comic books are comic books.
But Arkham Asylum is your favorite. What is your problem with Arkham City and Arkham Knight?
Collecty Magooby.
Apart from the Riddler in Arkham Asylum, there's not a lot of Collecty Magoobies.
No, there isn't a bunch of that.
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward, but then you're given scenarios. You're given like, oh, look at this room, and then you have to move through this room, and you have to figure it out. It's more Metal Gear Solid than any other thing I've played in a long time. You get your stupid detective vision. That detective vision isn't solely reliant on just just activate it at this time, and suddenly you'll see the thing you need. You have to actually walk up to it. You have to inspect it. There's more reading in Arkham Asylum than there is in any of the other ones. There's an actual mystery to solve.
And you know what's great with all of the Arkham games is the character design.
They look great.
The design of all of the characters. And if you were to go into the background recordings and the background readings, all of that stuff is so good.
One of the things I remember about this one, there's a key moment where you're facing Solomon Grundy. The whole game has been super linear up to that point. And then it kind of goes Metroidvania style. It lets you kind of shoot off in different directions. Because once you beat Solomon Grundy, you're kind of on the island on your own. And they're like, now you're solving the mystery. That's a good story. Whereas in Arkham City, it's like, well, now we just have to ramp it up. I never got the same satisfaction from doing anything.
I personally, in Arkham City, love the Penguin's design. I love that his little eyeglass is a broken bottle.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Cobblepot's cool.
Two-Face is going to be hard to translate anyway. I think what Nolan did with the movies is make a Two-Face that I find fun and exciting.
Yes.
That's the only Two-Face that I've ever found interesting, other than Tommy Lee Jones is the worst Batman villain in the entire movie history.
I liked his portrayal of
Two-Face. Oh, no. Back to the Batman Arkham series, though. I appreciate what they do. They got too far out there. The voice acting's great. I think a lot of the storytelling's great. What they do gameplay-wise goes way off from what Batman is. But Arkham Asylum is the closest to...
It's a pure Batman game.
A pure Batman game.
And that's why it deserves the spot of best IP.
We haven't talked about one game, though, yet. Marvel's Spider-Man for the PS4.
I've never played it. I can't really talk about it.
Have you seen that much about it?
I've seen an actual playthrough of it.
I will say this. I have played about 20 hours of this game within the past week. It is fantastic. It is a, dare I say it, perfect Spider-Man game so far. You know what's fun about the web slinging? So you hold the R2 button. You first have to hit X to jump off the ground.
Sure.
But when you're web slinging, you just hold the R2 button down. And if you hit X, it breaks off your web. But you'll shoot another one if you're still holding R2. So I stay low to the ground to pick up speed. If you need to get higher up to get above a building, you hold on to your web longer before you break it off. It's about breaking off the web, which is kind of when you choose your momentum and where you're going. And then you can hit the circle button and it'll stop and you reach back if you need to make a quick adjustment for where you're going. The web slinging, top notch. The best web slinging I've had in a game so far.
Okay.
And also, if you're doing something and you need to make a precision landing, hold L2. You can aim where you're going and tap the R2 button. Zero in a spot, land right where you're going. Super slick, very fun. All the battle mechanics, it goes back to the Spider-Man 2 movie game where you have the uppercut, you can knock people in the air, you can just web shoot guys and lock them to walls. There is a million different battle possibilities. You definitely see where Arkham and Spider-Man are influencing each other.
Well, it's the Assassin's Creed.
It's the truth.
Well, no, but that's the one who originated that.
It's the open world where it's fun to climb, it's fun to explore a giant world. And
the multi-person counter battle is what I call it.
Man, Assassin's Creed is responsible for so many different games these days.
Well, that's why when everyone criticizes Assassin's Creed, I'm the first one to be like, no, you're not paying attention. It influenced everything.
Because the moment that I get control of Spider-Man, the first thing I do is every little collect a pigeon, every little defuse the bomb, every little go to the top of this tower, and then you go to the top of that tower, you unlock all the treasure chests or whatever.
Now, to be fair, this Ubisoft style of gameplay, which we can call it that now, it's pretty ubiquitous.
But what's also great about the Spider-Man game, it walks that fine line where, I mean, it's not based on a comic book, it's not based on a movie, but it's based on the fact that you know a lot of this stuff. So it peppers in little references here and there, which is really fun. But what it does successfully, which I don't think a lot of games do successfully with QuickTime events, so far there's been a few moments where you are like fighting a helicopter and you have to assault the helicopter, fighting, which is essentially kind of a newer bad guy. And it's going down and you have to go to this side of it.
A heavy boss.
You have to Spidey sense, dodge something, and then you have to like tap square a bunch to rip this part off of the helicopter. But then this thing is falling. It's so tricky to balance that where you're half watching a cutscene, but you're also interacting with the environment and setting up webs to stop this from falling and this from falling. It made me successfully feel like I was in a Spider-Man movie,
right?
Where you have Tobey Maguire or Tom Holland or, you know, even Andrew Garfield, where a million things are going wrong and you are somehow able to barely stop it with your web powers and hold it together. I don't want to say it. It made me feel like Spider-Man.
Okay, I know.
Arkham Asylum makes you feel like Batman.
There's a phrase I don't use anymore when describing video games. Solid. I hate that. It doesn't describe anything. But saying it makes you feel like Spider-Man actually says something. Based on the time that you're actually saying something about it, it means something.
Dylan, do you prefer Spider-Man or Batman for best original story property?
It's going to have to go to Arkham just because of Arkham Asylum. I had such a good time with that first one. Even if I wasn't a fan of the second two all that much, I think everyone else was. I kind of got to fall in line.
I'm going to say my favorite of the best original IPs is Marvel's Spider-Man for the PS4. This is accurate to what Spider-Man is and what I expect from him, and it's also an incredibly fun game. Now, if Arkham Knight was as accurate as it is fun, that would be hard for me to choose. But I'm going Marvel Spider-Man here for this one. We're at a tie right now. Let's just move on to the final thoughts category. Okay. Favorite game for each superhero. What is your favorite game overall?
Shattered Dimensions.
You prefer Shattered Dimensions? That's your favorite game overall?
Yeah.
The Adventures of Batman and Robin for the Sega Genesis.
Really? Okay.
It's the best game. It's fucking Cuphead style boss rush almost. Where
I mean, I've never played it. That's the problem.
Do yourself a favor. Yes.
Tonight, probably, yeah.
Dude, that game is fun as shit. Okay. The most accurate game for each superhero. Batman Arkham Asylum is the most accurate Batman game, in my opinion. I can't imagine one that'd be more accurate to Batman.
No, I think you're right, just in terms of the fact that it actually has the medium to tell the story. And
Spider-Man, I'm going Marvel Spider-Man. Those are the most accurate in my opinion.
Marvel's Spider-Man, developed by Insomniac. I'm going to have to say that one.
Okay, wait.
Because I've seen...
Let's rework this final thoughts category. Okay. So, these are each worth a half point. So we can only choose one. So our favorite game out of all of the games, you're choosing Shattered Dimension.
Yeah.
I'm going to choose The Adventures of Batman and Robin. So that's each half a point. We're still tied. The most accurate game for each superhero, I'm choosing Batman Arkham Asylum.
And I'm actually going to give it to Sony's Spider-Man.
So we're tied.
Wow. This actually got more contentious than I thought.
Personally, outside of this, who do you think has the better games overall?
Are we talking about percentage?
If we need to go do the percentage vote, we will. Let me go first because I would base mine after you. Let me just say who I think has the better games overall.
Okay.
I'm giving it to Spider-Man. Spider-Man has done more with its property to explore different and unique takes. They've gone to more different series and they've made bolder explorations of the property. This is me being forced to choose because I love everything Batman does. I prefer Batman to Spider-Man overall as a hero, but I think Spider-Man has the better video games overall.
Oh, no. You know what? I'm going to agree with you. Spider-Man, I played a lot more of those games. Yeah. I felt more of a need and a want to play those games. It's harder to adapt Batman. It is harder to bring Batman into focus the way that he deserves to be put into focus. And let's put it this way, intellectual.
Batman would make such a good fucking novel.
Yes. Batman is more intellectual. Batman is something you have to pay attention to. Batman is a detective by trade.
Yep.
Whereas Spider-Man, you can do the action stuff. You can make him feel like Spider-Man without having to, let's just say, try too hard. He's got combos. He's got things he can do. He can use his web. He's a man made of spiders. What am I going to say?
He does whatever a Spider-Man does.
You know what? Actually, you brought me around on it. I was going to say Batman for a second there, but I actually agree with Spider-Man.
Now, if you had to guess, if we asked our Instagram fans who had the better video games, Batman versus Spider-Man,
I'm going to say 70 Batman, 30 Spider-Man.
No, it's close. No.
Was I close?
You were wrong on the wrong side.
Oh, it flips.
Batman 48%, Spider-Man 52%. They're close. People are divided as well.
Wow.
Batman is my favorite DC and Spider-Man is my favorite Marvel. I know you would choose Plastic Man and Stilt Man for your people, but
Stilt Man isn't a hero. Plastic Man's DC, yeah. Good choice. I kind of
nailed it.
I kind of prefer Elastic Man though.
I like Big Wheel.
I like Rocket Racer.
I like Ventriloquist.
I prefer Madam Rocket.
I prefer Madam Web. She's integral to a lot of Spider-Man stories. If you want to go multiverse, you need Madam Web.
She's not integral
to a lot of Spider-Man stories in the game. In the video game, she is.
Oh, piss off.
So our final answer for who has the better video games overall is Spider-Man, but we agree it is a close battle, and we love these video games for both of them.
Can I just say I don't like Batman at all, really?
You don't like Batman?
No.
Who's your favorite DC?
No, I might go Green Lantern.
Which one? You going Hal Jordan? That's the only one I know, so I'm testing Dylan. Because they almost made a Jack Black Green Lantern film, you know.
Guy Gardner. Duh.
I guess I don't know enough of the comic books. Do you know
who my favorite Marvel character is?
Macho Man Randy Savage from Spider-Man?
Yeah, that one.
Bonesaw?
Bonesaw! Ooh.
I'm gonna get you, Spider Guy.
Hey, Freak Show! You're going nowhere! I got you for 3 minutes! 3 minutes of playtime!
Is there a superhero that you think needs to have a video game that doesn't have one yet, Dylan? You can name one and talk about it for 1 minute. I'm going to go ahead and say
Silver Surfer.
Okay.
Have you ever played like a really great space combat game? Gravity doesn't make sense, but you're like still shooting lasers out everywhere.
Like a space dogfighter. That's what
Almost.
You want. Yeah. I would make a Final Fantasy Tactics style game where the different characters had different special powers and abilities that were representative of their superheroes. It's going to go Marvel, and it's going to be street based. There's no Namors.
So Daredevil.
It's going to be Daredevils, Spider-Mans. It's going to be It's starring Spider-Man, and it's going to be characters that don't have tons of big powers. Hawkeye can snipe someone, you know.
Sure.
I would do a tactical based game where there's no characters that are overpowered. It's grid. It's grid based.
Would it be hex? Would it be hexa based or would it be tile based?
Tile based. I'm a simple man.
All right. Well, I actually think that sounds really cool. There's something really nice about that.
So this has been Raw Dogs. A big special thanks goes out to Patreon subscriber Brian. Judge Tempest is what he goes by. It's Weekend_2 for Twitter. Thank you so much for supporting us. We appreciate it. It's Patreon fans that allow us to do what we do. We're not really making money right now, and we're doing a lot of work to make these podcasts and YouTube episodes and stuff happen.
Brad and Tom do a fabulous job editing this. And if you want to support us, please go on to Patreon. If there's one thing, and I think Brad is going to agree with me on this one, is that we're going to appreciate our fans no matter what the situation.
We love you. If you want to outright just like say what we talk about at the $25 tier, choose a topic, we will talk about it. If you can't support us that way, what we really would appreciate is a like or a subscribe. Write us a review. That's all great. Tell your friends about us. Thank you to everyone. If you want to reach out to us, we're at hairthedogcast@gmail.com. On Instagram, we're currently doing a character battle. When you're listening to this, we have the final 8 characters this week. So go to our Instagram at hairthedogcast to vote for who you want it to be. I don't know what it's going to be because right now when we're recording it, there's 32 characters left, but it's going to get down there. On Twitter, we're at HotDogCast. Follow us on Facebook. Reach out to us. We go to conventions. We want to meet you. We want to say hi, and we appreciate you listening. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. This has been Raw Dogs. We love you. We'll see you next time.
What are you doing up there?
Staying away from you.
That's a cute outfit. Did your husband give it to you?
Yeah!